Hello again, my sweet, wonderful, talented recruiting pals. It's me, Rob Stevenson, for Hiring on All Cylinders, embarking once more upon my never-ending mission to just launch nuclear content missiles into the recruitment atmosphere and shower all of you with the expertise of talent pros far more knowledgeable than I. I am really excited for this episode because I am joined by the president of recruitingdaily.com, William Tincup. He also serves on the board of directors for several HR tech companies, and we ended up having a wonderful chat about innovation in the HR world and how practitioners should go about assessing recruitment tools. There's so many, and if you're listening to this, I know your spam folder is just packed with prospecting emails promising to change your life and solve all your talent acquisition needs. Some of them are probably from Intello. My sweet little SDR pals are just languishing in your spam folders. What are you going to do? Anyway, William is a true mensch and just so knowledgeable. I know you're all going to love this one, so please give a warm HOAC welcome to William Tincup.
Do you want to add value to your business, or do you want to just be this administrative person?
And often, if you look at your talent team and the caliber of talent in your company, they correlate.
You could hire the best person for the job if they were in your candidate pool.
All these individual employees, one by one, together, their voices all come together to articulate the culture of the company.
This is
Hiring on all
cylinders.
William Tincup, thank you so much for calling in, Skyping in, and joining me today.
Absolutely, Rob. I can't wait to kind of see where this conversation takes us.
Yeah, absolutely. We got going a minute ago, and I kind of wish we had been recording at that point. Some big announcements today in the HR tech world out of Google. Do you want to comment on that? Kind of get us back to where we were a minute ago?
You know, it's just an amazing. I mean, we live in kind of blessed times because it's when one of the biggest companies, if not the biggest company in the world, throws their name in the hat in an industry that you and I care deeply about. It's a good day. And I mean, it's just like if Facebook and LinkedIn, Salesforce, name a company that's, one of these companies that you just kind of had always admired. And all of a sudden now they're in our industry. We might actually see them at conferences and stuff like that. So that's exciting. It's going to be disruptive. I think, once you consume news like this, I think you have to kind of look at it and go, okay, well, what does that mean?
Right.
What does it mean for candidates? What does it mean for recruiters? What does it mean for hiring managers? What does it mean for Google? And then you probably look at what does it mean for other companies that might be fulfilling on some of that stuff right now? Is it competitive with ATSs? Is it competitive with CRMs? Is it competitive with job boards or job distribution? There's probably a bunch of answers floating around right now, and time will tell. Ultimately, the best way to kind of figure out what market is the time. But it's an exciting day for me, for you, for any one of us that actually cares about this space. Today's an exciting day.
Yeah. And just to contextualize, we're talking about Google for Jobs, right?
That is correct.
So Google is going to launch jobs into their search results. So they're going to be indexing LinkedIn, Career Builder, Monster, Facebook, everywhere to try and pull in, I assume, job descriptions right into Google search. So you make an astute point there, William. Like, who exactly are they going to be competing with here, right? Is it going to be job boards? Is it going to be ATSs? There's all these myriad HR tech companies now, hundreds of them. So like, who's gonna have to go head to head with Google? Not clear right now, but I think, as you point out, also it's inherently good for the space to see these massive companies that have this fabulous opulence and success in every area they've touched, joining our industry.
Yeah, Google's an admired company on so many levels. So you live out in the kind of the ground zero,
Yep.
if you will, out there in the valley, and so you kind of see a lot of different things just by walking around and reading the local newspaper. But Google, for the rest of those that don't live there, Google is one of these companies that, as it relates to kind of HR and HR metrics and the way that they kind of go about recruiting top talent, the questions they ask, they've always been in our world. They've always been one of these companies that we'd like to get to know better. We know they do good stuff. We know they do really interesting things. Sometimes you hear about it. Maybe you go to a conference and somebody, like Laszlo is talking about whatever, but you don't really know. And they're a great company. They're well run. And you just want to know more about them. So them jumping into our space, I think I can't help but think that it's going to be good for candidates. I can't help that it's going to be good for the recruiting community. And time will tell as to who gets hindered or who has to change their model and kind of morph. I mean, last 30 years, people have predicted the death of the job board. And you know what? Job boards are still here
Still
and
kicking.
thriving in some ways.
Yeah.
So, is Google getting into our business, in their industry? Is it going to kill off Career Builder, Monster, Indeed, or whatever? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we've been predicting that for so long that it's really hard, even at Google's size and importance, it's hard to say that they're going to kill things off. But it's definitely worth watching.
Yeah, definitely. And it's an easy thing to say. It's a clickable thing to say that such and such is dead. But I mean, when you look at even just the last 20 years, like as you say, job board's still kicking. And again, as you point out, good for candidates, good for companies. Ultimately, they say a rising tide lifts all ships. So here we are.
That's right.
So I guess this concludes our current events segment of hiring on all cylinders. I have so many other questions that I want to ask you. We can talk about all of them or none of them. There are no rules. But
I love it.
you are
I love it.
You are the president of Recruiting Daily. You serve on a vast array of different HR tech boards. So I'm curious. When you go to these boards and you see what these companies, the directions they're heading in, the challenges they're facing, I'm curious what kind of trends you see, but not necessarily from the point their challenges in growing companies, but their challenges in addressing their market, in solving recruiter problems.
Yeah, it's interesting because you have a couple different forms of entrepreneurship. You have the entrepreneur who basically the Hewlett-Packard model of, why are things done this way? There's got to be a better way, and and whether or not it's a lifestyle business or they want to grow it and do different things. A lot of that kind of comes with time and experience, but it's generally entrepreneurs, I would say, outside of an industry. That essentially kind of have that Hewlett-Packard moment of, I don't understand, why this isn't done, and there's got to be a better way. Then you have another form of people that have had a problem, and not necessarily practitioners. So let's deal with just, gals and guys that are, let's say Greenhouse is a great example of this. Actually, I could give you a number of examples, but let's just say Daniel at Greenhouse.
Right.
These are guys that him and his partner ran a successful company, exited, and then were kind of contemplating their next, their next bit. And they thought back to, what did we have the biggest problem? Where was the pain in our last company? And it got back to recruiting. It got back to ATS and data and, all of the things that make kind of a great ATS. And so you look at folks like that, they're not practitioners per se, but those are folks that basically said they're not as familiar with the industry, but they're familiar with the problem. And then I'd say the third kind of part of entrepreneurship, type of entrepreneur, is kind of the practitioner. It's the recruiter. It's the HR, hiring manager, CHRO of people that know intimately the problem and the pain, and they know there's a better way. And they might have already been doing it a certain way. I love these examples of companies that basically they built technology to help them in their bit, in their job, and then basically said, I want to do that now. Like, I don't want to do the other thing anymore. I actually want to take this market. I want to take this tech and go to market. And like a Charlie Judy would be a great example with his company. He was a CHRO of Baker Tilly, a humongous accounting firm. And he dropped all of that to go pursue a technology. Never took not a software guy, never took technology to market, didn't go to Stanford,
Right.
a lot of things clicked off the list. Lori Rudiman with GlitchPath, yet another example of an HR person that basically said there's got to be a way to interact with failure and failure management the way that we interact with project management.
Sure.
And so I think those three buckets is generally kind of what I see in the entrepreneurs that I interact with.
Okay, sure. So follow up, there's that famous Henry Ford quote that said, if you asked the customers what they want, they would have said faster horses. So then does that mentality kind of exist in the HR tech, like innovator space? Is that, it sounds like you kind of think it's a mix of all three. Do you have a conception of whether one way is better than another?
Yeah, what's funny is first of all, that's a great quote. I'm not a huge Henry Ford fan, but that's a great quote. It's a great way to look at innovation in general. I like Billy Bean's quote around, if we weren't already doing it this way, how would we do it?
Right.
That's also kind of a great way of, let's forget all the things that we've done for a moment, disconnect from reality, whiteboard it, white screen, blank screen, and go, okay, let's kind of look at this. How would we do that? That's technology stack and process and even people, the way that we set up our people. I think there's a great way to kind of get at the that innovator and how to look at things differently. I think when you look at, can customers tell you everything? No. I think this is where you look at probably bringing in, it's like years ago there's this strategy around anthropology that I really kind of fell in love with. It was called comparative anthropology. And they have it in, and they have it in politics. They have it in a lot of different things now, literature, arts, all that type of stuff. But at the time it was basically taking a historical event, and instead of looking at it one way, let's look at it 26 different ways. And so you take like a historical, like Kennedy getting shot in Dallas, okay? Like that. First of all, if to paint that with one brush is to only represent it to the people that kind of see it in the same light.
Right.
But what was it like if you were, African American, and the person that was going to be leading a lot of the civil rights change is assassinated?
Yes.
What's going on in your mind? What if you were Catholic? What if you weren't for Kennedy? What if you were a Nixonite? What if you still had socialist or communist ties? Like looking at something in a multifocal way to kind of round out what is the event. Rather than saying the event looked like this, it's like, no, the event can have many shapes, kind of like crystal. So I think that's kind of what you get when you talk to customers. It's like, really, we want to talk to customers. We want to talk to our own product people. We want to look at competitors. We want to talk to partners. We want to talk to consultants that interact with this, analysts, thought leaders, anybody that kind of has a take and then form our own take. So important in all that is customers. So to do it without them is really a pathway to failure for me.
Sure. Yeah.
But to do it exclusively with them is also a pathway to failure. So I think this is where the kind of the better companies in our space, Rob, they build like CABs, customer advisory boards,
Sure.
and they meet frequently, and they kind of mainline the feedback from customers, and they're always interacting with users. They kind of like got a direct relationship with users, and they're getting feedback all the time. And then they take that and then they weight that against their own gut, their own intuition, their own take on the market, where they believe is going. So I think that's where what Henry Ford was saying is, you need to rely on them, but you don't need to be so dependent on their input that you can't make a decision outside of that. So I think it is looking at all those things and taking the pieces. And I can give you great examples in our space where people that do this well, it's almost like feedback is in the middle, and all these spokes of feedback are different audience groups. And then they take all that in, and then they look at it and evaluate it against their project or their product roadmap and go, okay, you know what? We're starting to see something a little bit differently than we saw last quarter. Let's prioritize and deprioritize.
What's one of those examples?
Cornerstone on Demand actually does a really good job of this. Workday does a fantastic job. Anytime, you can almost look at the size of the user groups size of the user community, offline and online, and you can kind of tell that companies that care about users go out of their way to interact with users. It's not lip service. They go out of their way to create a relationship, not just with the buyers or the admins of technology, but the actual users of that technology. And so those that do that, I think they form great customer advisory groups as well, where it's not as much of a ceremony as it's a job. Like the practitioner is proud to be involved because they're gonna have their viewpoints heard, and they know it's work. Like, it's not ceremonial. It's not something you're just putting on your LinkedIn profile. It's actually work, and it's work on both sides. So the vendors that treat it really seriously are the ones that spend money. That's one of the, if you look internally at those budgets, those that spend real money on those types of events are prioritize that type of feedback.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. I get emails from vendors all the time, just various marketing technology things, and I read, a tiny amount of them, and basically I kind of scoff at them saying, you don't know like what I go through, like what my day-to-day consists of, and you're a vendor and you have goals, and usually I'm being reached out to someone who might not be that familiar with my space. But then I guess it would be irresponsible for me then to not try and give my feedback to try and combat that, right? So then when HubSpot emails me and says they'll give me a $50 Amazon card if I take a 30-minute call and show them my paid search measurement process, it would be silly not to.
That's right.
So
That's
yeah,
right. It's especially okay. So take HubSpot. It's a great example. If HubSpot, you see HubSpot in your future, like if you can look out and say, I love what I'm doing with HubSpot. I know that this is a tool that will bend, and I know that the more I invest in it, the more I'll be able to get out of it. And the tools, like in your arsenal, there's probably 12 of those tools out of the thousands in that marketplace that you feel strongly about. With those, double down. That's my advice to practitioners, is just double down there. If you feel strongly about HubSpot, it's okay to actually be a fan. Like I tell practitioners, I kind of give them the okay that it's okay to kind of be a fanboy.
Yeah.
If you really like the tech, like Intello's wonderful. If you love Intello, tell people. Yeah. It's okay. Oh, yeah. It's not a bad thing.
Please tell people.
And double down. And double down. This is the moment, like with you and those technologies, where you say, HubSpot is a part of my life.
Yeah.
And God forbid you would ever kind of go somewhere else or do something else with your life, HubSpot would still be a part of your life in some way. And that's kind of how you look at it. And it's actually happened before in our space, in the workforce management space with Kronos, and the ATS space with like a Taleo or JobVite, where people literally have moved from jobs and then said, yeah, here's the technology stack. I got to have Intello, I got to have JobVite, I got to have Smashfly, I've got to have this, and this, and they all got to be fit together.
Yep.
And I'm seeing more the practitioners are coming into jobs with the technology stack that they want. They already, it doesn't even matter what you have, or maybe if it works or not, or they might do an evaluation, but they already know what they want, which I like that. I like that because back to the advice. If they send you a survey, if they want you to come to a conference, if they want to jump on a call, any of those things, good for you and then good for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said something so interesting there about trying to envision, or maybe already appreciating, that this tool can bend. I love that. So which just kind of speaks to how practitioners ought to assess tools, right? Like, not just what is this tool today, like can it cater to my immediate needs and challenges, but those are going to evolve and change as my team grows and as I grow in my own career. So how could, if I were evaluating HR tech, are those some of the like medium, long-term tough questions you should be asking those vendors or trying to answer for yourself if you're going to write them a check for $100,000?
The folks that, like take Intello, great product. Y'all been in the space for a long time. You're led by a really smart guy. And what I would ask if I were buying Intello is like, okay, where have you come from? What's your origin story?
Yeah.
Tell me how you came up. Okay, that's part of kind of the bit. Then I would say,
how far have you come already? Yeah.
What were some of the first innovations? Okay. And then, current state, that's kind of cool. And then, because, that's a demo. And then it's like, okay, what do you see around the corner? I mean, let's not go out to flying car stuff. Let's just go the next 18 months. Like,
Yep.
what do you think are going to be the releases? And if they can't give you this, even the sales folks is really what I'm talking about.
Yep.
If they can't paint that picture, then something's wrong. There could be a communications issue. It could be that they don't know. It could be that they don't have that vision. There are a lot of other things. But what you want is somebody that says, oh, my goodness, I can't wait for you to see a Q4 releasing ... And we've already got it in beta, and we might even get it out early, but no later than October 1st, and it's going to change the world.
Yeah.
Like, that's the level of excitement that salespeople should have, and that's the questioning, the line of questioning that practitioners should have as well. They should care about the product roadmap. Because the product roadmap and an articulated product roadmap is where you see some of the bends. It's some of the learns. It's some of the features that need to be rolled down or rolled away. It's integrations that need to happen, data flow. It's all that stuff. And, someone's keeping track of it at every technology company.
Yeah.
It's just, can we get that info in a light form, not anything that would hurt us competitively, but can we get that in a light form to the prospects?
Yes, absolutely. So that's on the role of like the end user, ultimately, probably the leadership, the person who's going to, well, maybe not. Maybe is the actual like end user of the product. I guess they're evaluating it on a current like what will it do for me tomorrow stage, and it's up to leadership to be like, okay, is this going to pay dividends for my team way down the line?
Yeah, and it's a bit of having one foot in the speedboat and the other in a canoe. You need it to solve problems today.
Yes.
So you can't invest in technology. Even some of the largest companies in the world can't go invest in technology that doesn't prove fruit today. It's got to bear fruit today. So it's got to solve something today, but it's just as important for it to solve some of those problems of tomorrow. And again, some of that's an awareness of knowing what some of the problems that you're going to have. And it's also kind of a communication. It's a discussion in the sales process where you just kind of hammer it out. Like, okay, I don't want you to tell me everything's on the roadmap. That doesn't actually help me. But I also have these problems that I know we're going to acquire a 10,000 person firm that's in the UK and also in France. And so having this tool that's translated into French it's not a current issue, but I know that it's going to be something we have to have. So is French as a translation, is that going to be available within the next 6 months? So, it's like the practitioners, you got to really kind of look at the business and look at how people use technology today. And I think that's people, if you three P's, if you say people, process, and product, but essentially it's like, what is the use case? How do we use, if you were to buy Intello, okay, we're doing that now. How are we doing it? Are we doing it in Excel? Are we doing it through LinkedIn? Like, how are we doing that?
Right.
How are we doing that bit? Okay. And then how does this displace it? And what does that change in our process? And do we need to change anything with our people? And so if you think like that on every single thing in HR and recruiting, then you can kind of get to the technologies that help you today and what they displace. Then it's now the analysis of, okay, what's near term? Don't go out to the flying car stuff. Like I remember when people used to build business plans that had 5-year, financial story. I'm like, you know what? If you can forecast 9 months, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Don't worry about those other 4 years because everything's going to change. So just focus on the next 9 months.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's some like next level evaluation techniques right there, because I think a lot of times people think, all right, well, we need a tool. We need some kind of technology. We need some sort of solution. And you would prod them to ask, why though? Like, what is your current process? Is it in Excel?
That's
is
right.
it in Google Sheets? Is it in a million different places? Like, does this consolidate that? So like, before you can answer that question, what tool should I get? You kind of have to have a really intimate understanding of how exactly the work's getting done at the moment.
That's right. Absolutely. And you know what? It's It's not that hard to find out. Actually, you get people in a room and you discuss it, and you work through. It doesn't matter if it's Post-it notes or written on a wipe-off board or Google Sheets or any of that. Like it is what it is. Like we don't need to fancy it up. It is what it is. However you work, that's cool. Let's capture it and then essentially say, how can we work better? Better has a lot of different ways of, is it faster? Is it cheaper? Is it come to a better, higher quality outcome? So better can be cut in a lot of different ways, but how do we do it better? And then when you do that, now you can kind of you free yourself up to say, okay, now we know what we should be looking for. My first step is not Google at that point. Right. My first step with practitioners is once you know and you've identified what needs to be done better is go talk to your peers.
Yep.
That's the first thing I tell people is you've got this wonderful peer group of people that are doing really innovative, cool stuff around you that you don't leverage. So the first thing, once we've done that bit, we found out, okay, we have a problem with data and rounding out profiles and then being able to do X, Y, and Z. Okay. Now that you know that, I'm sending an email. I'm literally tapping every way that I can tap my practitioner network to find out I have a problem, who's had this problem, and how have you solved it?
Yeah. And then the next step, once you're in communication with a vendor, it seems like it would make sense to be all right, here's my process right now. Here's how we do it. How does your product align? How does that fix it for us? How does it make it better? And
that's right.
You can kind of tell when you throw a salesperson off their mojo, right? When you get them from the pitch that they've done a million times to a more consultative, does this actually work for me? You start hearing them throw in, and those kind of things. And
a lot of hums.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of ands.
and to your point earlier, if they don't get fired up and oh yes, I'm so glad you said that, this way, then they're either not passionate about their tool or don't know it that well, or it's not a good fit for you, right?
That's right. And let's stop selling things that people don't need to them, because that's been going on for thousands of years now.
Yep.
But the better part of valor is this is the old chicken and egg question of what comes first, process or product. And I've said, at least publicly, and I believe it with my heart, that process comes first. And the way that I got to the answer is that you can put an inferior product on a superior process and it still works. Whereas if you do the opposite, it doesn't work. So if they don't understand their process as a salesperson, my first question is, hey, listen, we've got people, we look at thousands of process, we've got thousands of customers, we've literally looked at thousands of process. If you're not comfortable with your process, bulletproof comfortable, let us pressure test it. Let us help you with it. Okay, let us give you advice on how you make your process better. And then our tool will then align with that process. But I would tell you that most of the case, the failure points for practitioners is they either don't know their process or they believe too strongly in their process, or they're too rigid in changing their process. It's emotional. Sally came up with the process, and God forbid we ever change Sally's process, right?
Point of pride, yeah.
So if you're a practitioner and you're listening to this, don't do any of that. Don't fall in love with the process. What you need to do is know what it is, and then be able to go, hey, listen, it can always get better. What do we got to do to make it better? And here I am interacting with a great firm like Intello. These people know this. They know the process. And why I'd be a fool not to tap them for their wisdom, right? Because the product's going to lay on top of the process. And that also gets us in the vendor community tripped up, because we either oversell the functionality or we know that the process is faulty and we lay our gorgeous product on top of that, cruddy process, and they don't get the results that they want. And it looks like our product somehow is to blame when actually it isn't the product. It's the process or potentially the people. So I think the better way for vendors to interact with practitioners is say, hey, listen, we see all this. We see it from thousands of vantage points. Think of us as a resource to help you. You're going to be the one that dictates. You're going to be the one that makes the changes. It's going to be your process, and it's probably going to be different than anything we've ever seen. However, we know what works. And I think that's every vendor, because they pay close attention to who's having success and who's not. Every vendor knows what process works and what doesn't, where the failure points are in a process. And I don't think practitioners, I don't think they leverage that knowledge enough. And a lot of it, at least in my experience, comes down to either arrogance or they don't want to be vulnerable with a vendor. They don't want to say, hey, our stuff is really, really messed up and I don't even know where to begin and it hurts, but I just need you to help me. Like, that doesn't come out of practitioners' mouths all that often, and it should.
Yeah, absolutely. William, this is one of my favorite episodes are the ones where we don't at all go into the pre-written questions I had and actually have an organic conversation. So thank you for being yourself and being awesome. This has been a blast. I really appreciate it.
Well, we gotta do it again. That's what I've learned here. We've got to do it again because we at least got to get to some of those written questions. I know you wrote down some great questions, but I do understand, and thanks for having me on.
I would adore to do it again. This has been an awesome crash course in HR innovation and how to assess vendors, which I'm certain will be immensely valuable to all my dear listeners. So William Tincup, thank you so much for joining me. You can catch all of his work on recruitingdaily.com, where he serves as president and occasionally writes. Thank you again, William. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
And all of you out there in podcast land, you've been amazing, wonderful, talented, beautiful recruiters. I've been Rob Stevenson. Have a spectacular week and happy hunting.